tunnel headed to Cades Cove. We are in Cades Cove now. This is right at the very front entrance of the loop. We are at Cades Cove, and this is the visitor center at Cades Cove, and there is also a little community called Caleb's Mill. We're going to go down there and look around and see what we see. There's a visitor center that you can go in and shop, get souvenirs and park information. Sorry if the cameras are kind of jiggly.
Snakes active around buildings.
Snakes are active around buildings.
However, we do still use the original cornstones that they used in 1870. The gears beneath the floor date back to the late 1800s. They were originally applewood, and the people of the Cove made the swap to steel in order to cut down on maintenance. So since the Civilian Conservation Corps came in and did their restoration about 85 years ago, the National Park Service used this mill for several decades to sell cornmeal and grits to the public. However, we are unfortunately no longer considered food safe by the USDA. So what we grind here now is for education purposes, and then we donate it to local farms so they can use it as livestock feed. So the way that this operates is you have your water wheel outside, which is powering everything within here. There are no other sources of power. I do have some lanterns set up so that you can see different parts of the mill, but there is no power for the mill aside from the water, which turns the water wheel. The water wheel is specifically powering your top grindstone, which is housed in this big wooden piece called the collar. In the collar, you have both of your millstones. They were both made in, or they were always made in pairs. You have a top and a bottom. They're both about 3 feet wide, about 18 inches thick, and they weigh about 2,000 pounds apiece. So the bottom one is mounted and stays stationary, while the top one rotates and is the one that is actually connected to the water wheel. So it connects to the water wheel through this series of gears beneath the floor here. So there's a series of 6 gears that get progressively smaller as they work their way up to the grindstone. So by making each next gear smaller, the speed is stepped up so that by the time you reach the grindstone, for each one rotation of your water wheel, you're going to get 35 rotations on your top millstone. Once that's up and running, we load our corn into this hopper. That funnels down into this piece called the shoe. The shoe is one of the only adjustable parts of the mill. You can adjust it up or down to allow more or less corn to fall in. The slower you have your corn falling in, the finer your final product is going to be. This piece in the center that's sticking upright and spinning up against the shoe is called the damsel. So damsels are angular pieces that are mounted to the center of the top millstone. Top millstones were always made with a hole in the center and a steel crossbeam. That damsel fits to that crossbeam so that as the stone rotates, the damsel rotates along with it. So, as I mentioned, the damsels are angular pieces. They were typically either hexagons or octagons, and so as it rotates, its corners knock against the shoe, causing the shoe to vibrate. That allows that corn to slowly trickle out a little bit at a time. As the kernels fall out of the shoe, they fall through the hole in the top stone and get trapped between the top and bottom. As it gets ground finer and finer, the new kernels coming in push the finer kernels to the outer edge, where they eventually come out here as cornmeal. And so this is what we would use to make cornbread, biscuits, muffins, hush puppies, fish batters, all that. And we could use this wheel right here, and what this does is adjust the distance from the between the two millstones. It's actually cranking the top stone away from the bottom stone. So essentially, the further away from the bottom the top stone is, the grittier your final product is going to become. So by cranking it off a little bit at a time, I just got this started up a little bit ago, probably less than an hour ago, so I'm still trying to get it dialed in for the day. So I'm going to separate the stones a little bit to get that more traditional grit, and then we just have to check it about every 2 minutes or so to see what's coming out and see if it needs to be adjusted further. But once it gets to that traditional grit, I could crank the stones even further apart and I would get grits. And by cranking them even further apart than that, I could get cracked grains that would make good chicken feed.
Oh, wow. How long does a stone last to grind this?
A stone lasts a really long time. It's really not the grinding that wears the stone down, it is the sharpening. So it depends on how often the mill would remove it and resharpen it. When they were doing this at full-scale production, they typically took the stones off at least once or twice a year to sharpen them. But they are originally made about 18 to 20 inches thick, and then as they're grinding, they never actually touch. Grindstones aren't mashing and grinding. They have these geometric patterns carved onto their faces where the grooves reach the outside edge, and each groove is a beveled cut, so that as that top stone spins against the bottom, it pushes kernels down into beveled pockets and then shears their tops off. That next that cut part gets into the next pocket and then it's cut again, and so on and so forth. So actually the kernels aren't being ground, they're actually being sheared thousands of times, and the grindstones never touch. So when they would take it off to sharpen their faces, though, they would be taking a small layer of rock away every single time that they sharpened it. So a good stone could last you, several decades. But once it got to about half of its original size, they would start to consider, retiring it and replacing it, because it would be kind of hazardous to have something that thin slinging around inside your mill, because it could potentially break as it's spinning and then cause further damage.
Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah, I can see it all.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
you.
Y'all have an excellent day.
You too.
Get a good look at it before we go.
I hope I can get that from you
And
because I didn't record
Andrew
it.
Carver was a stonemason, and he would make the stones for the mills on the Cherokee side and some on the Tennessee side too. There's the stones he was talking about that were cut, and the mill the feed would go down into or the corn would go down into the shapes to shear them off.
That's where we was talking about the bevel cut,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah, that's where's the bevel cut. See, and it is pretty thin on that one. Both of them are,
This one's broken.
yeah, and there's one broken. See,
This looks like they were going to cut one from that.
that's probably how they cut them, yeah.
Comes down to
Go away.
still low. Seeing I can't just tell me what it was.
This is the spillway. It runs into Caleb's mill. His name was John Caleb.